All right, welcome back to another video, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through how I mixed and processed the vocals of this song Keresimesi by DavisKing. If you were in the last video, or if you watched the last video, I went over how I produced the song from an a cappella recording that was sent to me. I built out the song, the beats and everything, and in this particular video we're going to be going over how I mixed and how I processed every single part of the song. So without me wasting any more time, let's get right into the video. All right, so first let's quickly go over how I have my session laid out, and I like to have it this way. I feel it's very straightforward, for me at least. First here I have all the instrumental tracks in a folder, and then I have the lead and the ad-libs in a folder. I have the BGV, which is separate from the choir. I have the BGVs in their own folder, and then I have the choir in their own folder. As you can see, all the tracks are within the folders. So this way my session is tidy, and I know when I'm working on a particular thing, I'm working on that thing at that particular point in time. Makes life easy for me, and that's the way I like to work. All right, so before I go into especially how I process the vocals, let's quickly go over what's happening with the instrumental tracks. Let's get that out of the way first before we then look into what's happening with the vocals. In the previous video I already showed how I produced it and how I did the volume balancing and mixing for the instruments, so there isn't much going on as per mixing, but I just have a little bit of routing here and there, and that is what I'm going to show, how I'm routing things and how the instruments are interacting with each other and interacting with the music in general. The first things is I have the kick. I have two kicks here, and I've sent them to a kick group, which I'm going to be showing the processing later on. And every other instrument, these other basses, I have them sent straight to the mix bus because I didn't have any processing to do on them individually. And so these other one shots, I have them all sent to the drum bus. As you can see, all of these one shots, I have them sent to the drum bus. Then I have this gongo sent to the talking drum bus, and then I have this djembe loop sent to the djembe loop bus, and that's what's happening. Here we can see I have automation happening here in this conga fill, and it's just volume automation. It's just a gradual increase in volume, and then after that it goes back to its original volume, and same thing is happening here on the second time. Same with the drum roll, gradual increase and then a decline in the volume as well, and it happens for the two times when the drum roll happens. Right, so the other automation I'm doing is on this djembe loop. Same thing, volume automation, just increasing the level to just increase their prominence as that particular part of the beat is playing in the song. Now to the buses, or to the groups. On the kick group, I have the IK multimedia bus compressor, and I have my attack set at the slowest, release set at the fastest, and a 4:1 ratio. I just wanted to get that punch out of the kick, and that's basically what I'm doing. Just to get that punch, get it to hit harder, and also to glue the two kicks and make them one strong unified kick. That's basically what's happening there. And then on the send, I'm sending that to the drum bus as a sidechain input. I'm going to be showing what that is doing later on. Next is the talking drum. I just have that going to the reverb as a send. The djembe loop, I have the djembe loop also feeding into the drum bus as a sidechain input. And then I also have automation on the djembe loop, just volume automation, to kind of make things spicy. Then in the drum bus, I have Pro MB, and you can see here I have the sidechain input activated, and what I'm feeding into it is the kick group, like I said earlier, and then the djembe loop. So what I'm doing with the kick is to duck out the sub lows from the drum bus. Every time the kick hits, this particular frequency range ducks out of the way of the kick so that the kick will shine. And then this I'm using to duck out the drum elements whenever the whenever the djembe loop is playing. So you can see I have it set to external, which means it is listening for what is being fed into the compressor, into the multi-band compressor, same as this band right here set to external. And then this one I'm just using to tame the high end. So this one is internal, so it's just, you know, compressing itself and just using it to tame the high end, so it's not too spiky and too transient heavy, especially on the highs. And then in the all drums bus, okay, before that, I have here a compressor, same thing. I've activated the side chain and I'm feeding the conga fill and the drum roll into this. The reason I'm doing this is so that for every time this fills and this drum roll plays, other elements in the drum bus will just duck out of the way of these rolls a bit. Like I said in my previous video, the artist really wanted this song to be the focal point of this song. Besides the lead vocal is the percussions, you know. So for every time the percussions are playing, he wants these percussions to shine through as much as possible. So all of this side chaining I'm doing is just to make sure that for every time the percussion is playing, every other element is, you know, reduced in volume, so that there isn't so much frequency clash or volume clash or masking or, you know, things of that nature. Right, and then in the all drums group, which I have sent, I've sent the kick to the all drums group. I've sent the talking drum to that group as well. I've sent the djembe loop, and I've sent the drums to the all drums. And on this bus, all I'm doing is just a little lift on the lows at 60, and then also a little lift somewhere around the upper mid-range 5k, and then taking down a little bit of 10k. You know, this is just to make sure that I have the drums, like I'm injecting life into the drums, you know, low end boost, top end boost, just a little bit, kind of that smiley face curve, you know, to bring the drums to life a little bit more. And then on the instruments bus, this instrument bus, I have all of this feeding into it, every melodic instrument, right? So some engineers would name this bus melodies bus, but I name it instrument bus. So here I have the keys, the synth, you know, everything that is an instrument that is not a drum or that is not drums is being fed into the instrument bus. And then there isn't much happening there, just compressor, and I'm feeding the conga fill and the drums into it as well, just so that whenever these are playing, the instruments are also, you know, laid back, right? Very simple stuff, nothing much, nothing crazy happening. So yeah, now that we have all of the drum stuff out of the way, let's focus on what's happening with the vocals. So in the vocals folder, you can see here there are parts that I've muted and there are parts that I've left unmuted. This is because the artist sent me his different takes and I had to sift through these different takes to comp his best takes from all these different takes. This is what I encourage him to do, especially since he's a self-recording artist. He records himself in his personal studio or his home studio. So I usually would encourage him to do multiple takes and then send over all these multiple takes, and then I can sift through them and then comp the best takes for the song, which is what I've done here. I've just left everything in here just in case I need to go back and make changes. I can always have the freedom to do that. So all of this sending to the lead vocal bus, but then on the individual channels I have these going on: auto-tune, EQ, de-essing, and then a multi-band compressor. So let's hear first what's happening without any of this processing, and then we'll engage them and see what's going on. Right, so the first thing I'm doing is auto-tuning. I've gone ahead to determine what the key and scale of the song is, and then I've increased the retune speed all the way up to 10, and then same thing with the flex tune all the way up to 70. So what this does is it gives me a decent amount of tuning, but then it doesn't make it sound robotic. It doesn't have that very auto-tuning effect to it. Mind you, before I put on the auto-tune, I had already gone in to edit the pitch, you know, manually with Vari Audio. Vari Audio comes with Steinberg's Cubase stock. So yeah, so let's hear what the auto-tune is doing. So you can hear it still sounds very, very natural. It doesn't sound like there's any kind of tuning or processing going on or happening with the vocals. And that's how I like to treat vocals, you know, make sure that it's as clean or as natural as possible, even though there's a decent amount of tuning happening. And then the next thing I have is Pro Q3, where I'm just doing a high pass all the way up to 120, 122, and then I'm notching out these low mids, you know, to take out that bottom mod. And then I'm carving out this frequency around 900. I found that this frequency was responsible for a lot of boxiness. All right, you know what, let me just show you what's happening in those frequencies and why I took those particular frequencies out. So let's go with this one first. Let me go ahead and turn all these off, and then we'll hear with this first. So I was taking out all of that mod, and then here we have this. So you can hear it sounds like he's singing with his mouth covered, and I didn't want that frequency region to be so present in the recording, so I just had to notch that one out. And then these ones are just dynamic filters, apart from these two, which I'm using to control harshness, just dimming the harshness a bit, and then using the dynamic filter or activating the dynamic filters so that whenever it goes beyond, or whenever those harsh frequencies become too prominent, these dynamic filters can go the extra mile and then tame those parts. And same thing happening here as well around the 500 range. I am using this as a dynamic filter because I found out that range was not really problematic except for in specific places. So whenever it gets to those specific places, this dynamic filter engages and then just tames that part out, as well as this right here. So that's that for the EQ. And then the next thing I'm doing is de-essing, because there's a lot of Keresimesi, so there are a lot of S's in the song, and I didn't want it to become a problem, you know, at the end of the day. So I just had to do light de-essing, not something too crazy. And I'm doing that especially because if you listen to the vocal, he sounds like he's singing with a lisp, even though I know that the singer doesn't have a lisp, but it sounds like he's singing with a lisp. So I want to affect the sibilance, yes, but I don't want to worsen that situation. And so I had to make sure that the DSI isn't doing so much and just controlling those S's whenever they are too prominent. Right, so after that, I have the Pro MB. What this is doing is as well still controlling the different frequency ranges. I have this one controlling the low mids. You know, low mids is something you really want to watch out for when you are dealing with vocals, because those can easily build up and, you know, destroy all your hard work. So you really want to be careful when dealing with the low mids. So I have gone ahead to reduce the output of this particular band between 137 and 500. This is where you find mod in vocals. So I have dipped it out by just 1 dB, and then I'm compressing. As you can see, I have the attack at the fastest attack and a relatively fast release as well, so that whenever that frequency is trying to jump out, the compressor can, you know, clamp down on it as quickly as possible and then also let go once it goes below the threshold. For the mid-range, I'm doing a relatively fast attack, not so fast, but then I have it at a very fast release so that I'm not clamping down on the transients. I want it to be compressed, yes, but I don't want to make the transients, I don't want to crush the transients or kill them. So yeah, I have it at a very fast release so that it recovers before the next compressor hits, and then when the next compressor is hitting, it's not hitting as quickly, or yeah, it's not hitting as quickly as it should. And then this, I'm doing more de-essing with this. So I have the attack set at a very fast attack and a medium to fast release. This is helping me just control those, you know, S's and that high end, so that it's not so nasty when you hear it, right? So that's just all this Pro MB is doing. And I have this active on all the individual channels, so you can see they all have the same processing going on them individually, and then they are all sent or being fed into the lead Vox bus. And in the lead Vox, first thing I have on the vocal chain is EQ. Here I'm still trying to carve out a little bit of the low mids, and then I have a dynamic filter targeting this boxy region, just so that when that frequency range becomes prominent again, it, you know, takes it out and you know, just relaxes it. And then this one, I'm really trying to take out the mod, because as I'm processing, I'm finding out that there is still some level of mod, and mind you, I haven't boosted anything, so I'm just really trying to take out the lows or the extra lows or the excess lows that I feel like the song doesn't need. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. So with the EQ, or let's hear without the EQ, and then I'll engage the EQ and see what's happening. Right, so it just helps make the vocal sounds a lot clearer, and then make sure that everything is tidied up and there is no craziness happening before it's being fed into the compressor. The next on the chain is compression, and then I have the LA76 or the Black 76 as IK Multimedia calls it. This is an 1176 emulation, and I have it at the fastest release but at a slower attack time. Why? I want to retain the transients of the vocals. I don't want to have it crushed. Yes, I know the 1176 is a very fast compressor. The attack time is really very fast, but then still relaxing it a little bit still helps make sure that it retains the transients and doesn't crush it as much. Let's see how many dB of gain reduction I'm going for on this one. So yeah, you can see what this is doing is just controlling, especially those points where the singer is singing the higher notes, Keresimesi, because when people sing notes that are a little bit high above their range, they tend to, you know, use a lot more energy, which means that they have to sing a lot louder. So at those points, the compressor is just, you know, bringing down those parts and then making it, you know, rhyme or be even with the other parts that are not as loud. So you can hear it's the Keresimesi, Keresimesi day. Whenever it's hitting higher notes, the compressor is engaging and just pulling those back down a bit. I could have gone for more gain reduction, but I know I'm going to be compressing in series, so I wanted each compressor to just do a little and, you know, not do the whole of the work or the bulk of the work. And then the next compressor I have is the LA2A emulation, also by IK Multimedia, and let's see what this is doing. So you can hear the vocal now sounds a lot more consistent, even though this compressor is still bringing down the levels of those places where he's singing higher notes. It doesn't sound as though it's doing that, because this is quite a transparent kind of compressor. Yes, it has a slow attack and a frequency dependent release, and that really helps it maintain or retain the quality of the signal that's being fed into it, in this case the lead vocal. And you know, it just makes everything sound good and sound, you know, better. So yeah, that's that for the compressor. So now let's take a minute to listen to what I've done so far, the EQ and the compression, and then we'll hear it without and then with. So you can obviously tell when I have it bypassed, there are some parts of the lyrics that, you know, you almost cannot hear, that are drowned in the instruments. And once I have it engaged, you can hear everything, you know, audibly. You can hear everything clearly, and everything becomes very, very audible. So the compressor has done its job. It's, you know, brought down those highest points, or the peaks, the highest peaks, and then has, you know, brought up the lower parts of the signal to make us have a more consistent, you know, vocal performance. And now we can hear the words clearly across the entire, you know, chorus without needing to lean in to hear, oh, what is he saying or singing at this particular point. So yeah, on to the next, we have saturation, and I'm using Saturator X, also from IK Multimedia. I have it set to tape 1, and I've increased the gain a little bit, you know, not so much. And the good thing about this saturation plugin that I like is the fact that if you turn up the gain, the output also turns itself down. So it's like they are linked, right? I'm sure you can unlink it from here, but then I like to have it linked so that I don't fool myself thinking because I'm making the signal louder and pushing it more into saturation. Gosh, why do I keep saying compression? Pushing it more into saturation, I'll now fool myself into believing that the sound is becoming better when it's only becoming louder. So yeah, this helps, you know, make sure that I am doing the right thing. Let's hear what it sounds like with the saturation. Immediately you can already hear sounds better, sounds good, more life to the vocals. And then I have a DSR again. I don't think I'm doing so much with this DSR this time around. Right, so the only reason I've brought in this DSR at this point in time is because I've introduced saturation. So, and I did the saturation, or I applied the saturation across the entire frequency spectrum. So I know that a lot of frequencies are going to be boosted or exaggerated, and I just wanted to make sure that I am taming, first of all, the high end, the high end of things, making sure that it's not overly annoying. So the next I have is this EQ P1A. Now we're getting into additive EQ. I'm using this to breathe more life into the vocals, you know, add more presence, add more clarity, take out more low end stuff that I don't want or that is not serving the music. So first off, at 60 Hertz, I am taking out about 3 just to make sure that all of those low mids and low end is being, you know, brought down a little bit to carve more space for bass and every other bass type of element. So yeah, and then at 10k I'm boosting up to 4 to bring out some brightness, clarity into the vocals. And then I'm also attenuating at 20k hertz. I'm attenuating up to 2. Now it's starting to sound like a finished record. I mean, already the vocals have come to life. The vocals is giving vocals, if you know what I mean. Now with all this addition, I don't want to run the risk of having, you know, one part of the vocal performance jumping out while others excuse me, while others are still, you know, under the instrumental. So I have another compressor, and this time I'm using the opto compressor from IK Multimedia. And first off, I've jammed up the inputs. I pushed it up 7 dB, but I also took it out by 5 dB. And I'm doing 5 dB because I'm taking into account the compression that's going to be happening. So that's why I did 5 dB and not 7 dB. So what I'm doing, I have it at 1.5 to 1 ratio, and I have the attack at 17 milliseconds. So it's not a very fast attack, but then it's also not a very slow attack. Then I have it at the medium release setting, and I've pulled back this compression knob to the point where I'm getting at most 2 dB, or maybe between 1 and 2 dB of gain reduction. So yeah, now the vocals are sounding alive and in your face. Sounds alive and in your face, which is really what we want. Yeah. And the next thing I'm doing is Pro MB. I'm using this also as a safety net. Here I'm boosting this this mid-range from 1k all the way up to 8k, just giving it a little boost. And then while I'm doing that, I'm also compressing it, you know, just to make sure that I'm not killing the transient there, and then while still bringing it, you know, forward. And then this I'm using to make sure that every signal on the low mids is being tamed and taken care of if at any point they try to jump out unnecessarily or stuff like that. Same thing here also with the high end, and you can see I'm doing a very fastest attack and the slowest release to make sure that if those S's or those sibilances try to poke out, the compressor clamps down on it and holds onto it for as long as it can, so that it doesn't become problematic in the mix. And then on this far low end side of things, I'm also having the same kind of settings as what I had here: fast attack, slow release. I actually don't need anything from this frequency range, right? So that's why I'm pulling the threshold all the way down, so whenever the vocal is singing, it's just clamping down whatever might be coming out from there, if there is. So let's hear what the Pro MB is doing. Right, so yeah, it just makes it sound a lot better and make sure that we are in a safe space with the lead vocals. And that's all that's happening with the lead vocals. And then on the BGV side of things, so this BGV is the artist singing to emphasize some parts of the verse that he's singing. So let's hear. A savior, sovereign Lord. Lord, we're grateful for your plan that you fulfilled in Bethlehem, sending us your only son to save us all from death and hell. A savior, sovereign Lord. So yeah, that's all that is happening. And I don't have so much going on with these BGVs, except for the fact that I have auto tune on each of them, and then I've routed all of them to the lead vox bus, which means that they are getting the same processing as the lead vocals. All that I had to do is to turn them down in the mix to make sure that they are not at the same level and fighting with the lead vocal, and that's about that. Then coming to the choir, I have them color coded: yellow for soprano, orange for alto, blue for tenor. Also, nothing going on here except for panning and volume leveling to make sure that everything is balanced within each other and also within the mix. So there is no processing going on the individual channels. Everything is happening at the subgroup. So I've sent all the sopranos to the soprano subgroup, all the altos to the alto subgroup, same as the tenor, where I am processing them to get what I want from them. So first off, we need to take note that the same processing that I have on soprano is the same processing on tenor and on alto, just maybe a little different points with regards to EQ, and that's that. So let's see what's happening within soprano. Now this is what they sound like without any of the processing on them. Right, so as far as EQ goes, I'm just doing a low cut all the way up to 173, and then taking out this low mids part to take out the mod from them, and then also carving out this with a dynamic EQ filter, taking out this boxy region just to get more clarity from the vocals. And then on the multi-band side of things, I'm really squashing the low end. I don't need anything from that part. The low mids, I'm also still further taming them. Fast attack, relatively fast release. The mid range, very fast attack, very fast release. And then I'm boosting it just a little bit by 1 dB. And then I'm also using this frequency band to control the sibilance. And the same thing is happening on the other guys as well. Same low mid cuts, and same thing here. Same thing too with the tenors. Low cut up to here, and then taking out this here, and then doing more dynamic filter cuts. So yeah, now with the processing on all of them, this is what they sound like. Coming from this to this. So I just used those processing to bring the vocals to a place where I can say, okay, now let's actually do some work on them. All I did was to clean them up at this point and to get them to a point where they are all level, sort of level in volume. And now I am treating them on the choir bus, which I've routed them all to. Now the first thing I have is the EQ, which I'm just doing a low cut and then a high shelf boost, just to get them to pop out a little bit, make them brighter and introduce some air and sizzle to the vocals. Let's hear what that's doing. Right after that, I'm going for tube compression. For this, I have a slow attack and a fast release on this tube compressor, and I'm using the Steinberg's, the stock tube compressor that comes with Cubase. And then I've also increased the drive a little bit just to add a little bit of saturation. I have the ratio at a low ratio. I believe this should be about maybe 2 to 1, 3 to 1, or thereabouts ratio. And then I'm just doing light compression, maybe 1, 2 or 3 dB of gain reduction. Right, so what bus compression does for your signal is to glue all of them together, to merge them together. Now whatever you are doing on the bus level is affecting all of them, so it's giving the same effect, and that helps, you know, glue them, because they are all going to be reacting in the same way to the processing. Now the next thing I have is more saturation, and I want to use this to bring the vocals to life a little bit. I've boosted them on the high end, and now I'm using this saturation to give it a little bit of low end bump so that they have a little weight, and I have them on the class A setting on the tube side of things. Let's hear what it's doing. Without and with. Just introducing a little bit of body to it, you know, so that I don't thin it out a lot, because I've done quite a decent amount of low mid cuts from all of them. So I just want to reintroduce that low mid to give them that body back. Next thing I have is EQ. Now I'm using an analog EQ, also for the sake of saturation, you know, coloring the sound and also adding to the sound. So for this one, I'm really just cutting out a little bit from the 100s, and then I'm boosting at 12k. I'm boosting a little above 2. It's about 2.2 or 2.3 or thereabouts, and then I'm also pulling down from 10k just a little bit. Let's hear what that sounds like first without. And with. Right, so the next thing I have is a de-esser, just to control the top end, the sibilance that, you know, since I just boosted this 12k region, I would have, in the course of doing that, introduced a little bit more sibilance. So I'm using this de-esser to tame that. And then the next thing I have is a compressor, and this is not actually compressing. I've engaged the side chain, and then I'm feeding the lead vocal into it, so that whenever the lead vocal is singing, the background vocals or the choir is just, you know, ducking out of the way of the lead to make the lead shine. The lead is always the focus. And then I'm sending everything to this imager from Cubase or from Steinberg. With this imager, everything above 10k, I'm pushing it out wide, and everything between 1.5k and 10k, I'm also pushing it out wide, but then not as wide as the top end. And then for everything between 150k and 1.5, just a little 110. So the 100% is the default, but then I'm just pushing this up to 110, and then I'm leaving everything from 150 below just at the default state. And what that is doing is just increasing the stereo width of the choir, make them sound wider. Okay, let's hear what they sound like before that, and then we'll engage it. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so that's all the processing I have. Now let's hear it with the lead vocal. So right, you can hear there's a good relationship between the lead vocal and the choir. They are at a very good distance from each other. The lead vocal is still up front, still where it's supposed to be, and the choir vocals are just, you know, behind them, but then also wide as should be. So from that point on, I have my effects. I have quite a number of them. I have the short reverb, long reverb, the mono delay, stereo delay 2. This stereo delay 2 is at a different timing. I believe this should be like half notes, while this one is quarter notes. and then parallel compression, lead top end boost as I've named it, and then this octaver and telephone effect I'm not using within this project. So for the short reverb, I have the Valhalla. First off, I like to EQ my reverb, and I like to put the EQ before the reverb so that unnecessary signal or information is not fed into the reverb. And then I'm using the Valhalla smooth room, no pre-delay. I have it at a 1.06 second decay time, and yeah, I'm just using the smooth room preset. For the long reverb, I have it set to the concert hall, 4.25 seconds, 33.2 milliseconds. All these reverb times are timed, actually, are timed to synchronize with the BPM of the song. And how you do that is by taking 60,000 and dividing it by the BPM that you have, or the BPM of the song, and that gives you the quarter notes. So you can either divide from there or multiply from there. An alternative would be to go online and look for a reverb time calculator, so that you can just put in your BPM and it will give you the different reverb times for whether it's quarter, half, a whole note, or 1/8 or 1/16, whatever you wish to get from your reverb. So yeah, and then I have the mono delay. I'm using the mono delay from the stock one from Cubase, and I have it set to 1/2. This is half step, and it's synced to the BPM. And then the stereo delay, I'm also using Cubase stock stereo delay. This is at a 1/8 and 1/16 setting, and then I have the feedback turned down a little bit. For the stereo delay too, I have this at half times, also synced to the beat. What else do I have? Parallel compression. I believe I'm feeding the lead vocal into this, so I'm using the IK Multimedia's 1176. I have the attack set at the very fast and then release set at the very slow. Why? Because I want to really clamp down and crush the thing. You can see I'm pushing the input all the way up, meaning that the entire signal is going above the threshold. So it's crushing the entire signal as fast as possible, and then it's holding on to it for as long as possible. So that's how I'm approaching the parallel compression here on this track. And then for this lead top end boost, I'm just using it to add more excitement to the lead. I'm adding more air, more high end sizzle to the lead, but I'm doing it in parallel and not directly on the lead. Why? So that I can automate it, take it higher or lower as I see fit in the song, which I've done here. If you look carefully at it, which I've done here. So how am I doing that? First off, I'm using this EQ to just carve out the high end and make sure that everything I'm doing is just affecting everything from 4.5K, or let me say from this point, because it rolls all the way down to here, from this point all the way to the highest point. And then I am introducing saturation at a very, very generous level. You can see that right here. And I'm engaging the tape 2 setting. Then multi-band compression, which I'm using to further inject more high end into it. And then a DSR to just control all of that brightness. So the DSR is like the sunglasses that you put on after all of this light is shining. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing, and I'm feeding the vocal into the parallel comp, and also into the lead top end, as you can see right here. So that's that. I'll just turn on all the effects and then we can hear what's happening. Okay, so let's look at what I'm feeding into what. So for the lead vocal, I'm feeding into almost everything, short reverb. But then an interesting thing I'm doing is automation, which I would advise or encourage every mix engineer to do. Be sure to always automate your effects or your processing to give your mixes, some life. As you can see here, I have some automations going on. So at the chorus level is where a lot of the effects are happening, and then at the verses, just as minimal as possible. But then at the chorus, I have the stereo delay come in and out. At this point it's on, at this point it's off, just emphasizing some phrases or some words that I want to really push out. Same also with the stereo delay too. I'm using it to emphasize some words here. So you find out that when you have a signal feeding into two different types of delay at the same time, you can really get some interesting movements with, you know, your signals feedback. And that is what I have tried to achieve here. So let me just solo the lead vocal with all of these automations going on, so we can see what's happening, or we can hear what's happening.
Sovereign Lord, we're grateful from death and hell, a savior. Sovereign Lord, Keresimesi, Keresimesi day, Keresimesi day. Abi Olùgbàlà kan fún wa nílùú Bethlehem. Ẹni tí ó jọba ayérayé.
So yeah, that's what we have. And then at the verses, I have the reverbs, the long and the short reverb at a lower level, and then once they get to the chorus, I bumped it up a little bit, you know, to put it in that space. The chorus is supposed to be big or bigger than the verses. The verse is supposed to sound a little bit more intimate, and that is what I've done. Make the space bigger when it gets to the chorus, and that's what I've done with the automations on the reverb. So yeah, that's probably everything. I'm not sending the BGVs anywhere. I have nothing sent to this BGV, or routed to this BGV rather. And then all of these guys here, and then on the choir, I have them just sent to the reverb, the short and the long reverb, and I have automated this delay to only come in at this point. Just almost the same thing as what we have on the lead vocal. You can hear, and then it goes on and on and on, and that's that. So it's only coming up at this point. So here you can see it's off, and then when it gets to this point, it comes on. So yeah, that's all that's happening. And then on the djembe loop, like I already stated earlier, there's a little bit more automation going on, volume automation. And you know, that's everything that's happening as far as effect goes. And then on the mix bus, where I'm now processing everything together, I always start off with an EQ, you know, just to listen if there is any part of the sound that is really, you know, not sounding balanced. If there's any part of the signal frequency wise, I'll just use the EQ to be sure to correct that before doing any other kind of processing, so that those bad frequencies don't get exaggerated. So on the mix bus, what I'm doing is I have two low cuts. First one on the stereo, and I'm cutting it all the way up to 20 hertz because I don't want anything below 20. I cannot even hear anything below 20 on these headphones. And then I have the side channel, or the side information, everything on the side being cut out all the way up to 80. So everything from 80 below is going to be mono as far as these settings go. And then here I have a bump at 55 on the mid. This is just to emphasize the kick and make sure that the kick, you know, pumps out or pushes forward a little bit. Then here I'm boosting this part of the mid range because I feel like that is where the bulk of the music and the vocals, that's where they are happening. So I'm boosting it just a little bit. You can see 0.49, almost 0.5, just to push it forward a little bit on the mid channel, so that regardless of what listening device you are listening on, you will always hear it. Whether it's a stereo device or a mono device, you will always hear this part of the frequency, which represents almost everything that's happening in the song. And then I'm also taking that frequency out from the sides a little bit, you know, just to make this frequency range a little bit more mono than stereo. And then I have a dynamic EQ activated here, you know, just to take out this part of the frequency whenever, you know, the need arises for it, because here around the 300 and around the 500, 600, even sometimes all the way up to 800, there can be some very annoying resonances if you are not careful or if you don't treat them properly. So let's hear what the EQ is doing. Let's see if it's helping the sound in any way. So that's what we have. And then the next thing I'm adding is this EQP1A again from IK Multimedia. And what I'm doing this is boosting the low end for the kick and the bass, everything that's around that region to really shine through, because this song is supposed to be groovy, and the only way you can really groove to it and feel the beat is if the kick and the bass and everything like that is hitting you right here. So yeah, I'm pushing up 60 hertz all the way up to 3, but then also attenuating almost at 3, just to get that unique EQ curve that the EQP1A is known for. And then at 12K, I'm boosting it up to 1, and then also taking out 1 at 20K. So yeah, just to control that high end as we are boosting it a little bit. The next thing we have is the Pro MB, which isn't really doing anything. I wonder why I have it on here. Okay, so the Pro MB is not doing anything. Let's take that out. And then we have EQ again, still taking out that very low end rumble. Since we just boosted with the EQP1A, a lot of this rumble is going to be boosted as well, so I had to make sure I still cut those out and then took out a little bit more of the mod that's going on. So let's quickly hear, before we get to the last processing, let's hear what we've been able to achieve with all this processing so far. Whoa, sorry about that. All right, so the next thing that we have is the compressor, and I'm using the SSL bus compressor emulation from IK Multimedia. Attack set at the slowest and release set at the fastest, and I have the sidechain high pass filter set all the way up to 250, so that the internal detector is not detecting all the low end energy and then compressing based on that low end energy. So I'm just changing the focus of the compressor's detector to focus only on things that are above 250 hertz for it to engage the compressor. And then I'm just using this to glue things and put things in place and make them gel a little bit more together. And I think I'm going for about maybe 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction. Just really very light compression. I don't know if I can even say that this is even up to 1 dB of gain reduction, right? So just really very minimal compression. It's just making sure that the highest things or the highest peaks are just brought down or brought back a little bit, just a little bit, to control things. And that's all that I have on the mix bus. And so there you have it. This is the entire mix for Keresimesi by my man DavisKing, and I'm going to be leaving a link down in the description box below for you to check out the full song. I'm going to be leaving the link to the song so you can listen to it. The song was produced, mixed and mastered by myself, and it's actually a Christmas song, but yeah, you can listen to it even though this is not exactly the Christmas season right now at the time of filming this video. So yeah, that's that. Let me let you enjoy the song beyond this chorus point. Let's go somewhere here. My bad. If you enjoyed listening to this song as much as I enjoyed making the song and mixing it, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, please head on to the link down below. Listen to the song, support my friend, and also subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video. It will really mean a lot to me and to this channel. Thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you for sticking by, and I'll see you in the very next video.